What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel, and it is time for another game preview / game prediction here for the 2023/2024 college football season. And our game preview / game prediction will be the 2024 college football playoff semifinal matchup between the number 3rd ranked Texas Longhorns and the number 2nd ranked Washington Huskies. So we're going to give you my game preview / game prediction here on this playoff semifinal matchup here. We're going to go through the stat comparisons here between these two teams, give you the game summary of what time this playoff semifinal matchup will be, and also who the favorite going into this playoff semifinal game will be as well. And then we'll take a look at the previous game results from the 2023 season for both of these teams, and then we'll give you my official prediction at the end of this video, and I'm going to be predicting how they think the game's going to go down as well. So let's get right into my official game preview / game prediction here, again for the playoff semifinal matchup here between Texas and Washington. We'll start with the stat comparisons here between these two teams. We'll start with the Texas Longhorns. They're coming into this game with a record of 12-1. This team is averaging about 36.2 points per game. You look at the total yards per game for this Texas team. This team is averaging about 475.9 yards per total yards this year. So this is a very explosive Texas offense. They can score points, and they are just a very explosive offense overall on the offensive side of the football. Passing yards per game for Texas, about 286.8 yards per passing. You look at Quinn Ewers, the quarterback for Texas on the year. He's got 3,161 yards of passing on the season, 21 touchdown passes, and then about 6 interceptions. So he's been taking care of the football pretty well for this Texas team this year. You look at the rushing yards for Texas, about 189.1 yards per rushing. So this is a pretty decent running game that Texas has this year. Jonathan Brooks, one of their top running backs in the backfield, has 1,139 yards on the year and about 10 rushing touchdowns. So he's been having a really good season at running the football for this Texas team. And then offensively and defensively here in the rankings for Texas, they're 9th on offense, and then defensively they're 24th on defense. So no surprise here that Texas is ranked 9th in the country on the offensive side of football. Again, this is a very explosive offensive team, so they're 9th in the country. And then defensively, they're pretty solid on that side of the football as well. They're 24th on defense, so they're at least ranked in the top 25 on the defensive side of football. So these are the stats here for the Texas Longhorns heading into this playoff game. And then you look at Washington. They're coming into this game with a record of 13-0. So they're undefeated going into this playoff semifinal matchup. This team is averaging about 37.7 points per game. You look at the total yards per game for Washington. This is also a very explosive offensive team. They're averaging about 469.1 yards per total yards this year. So again, this is a very explosive offense as well. These are two great explosive offensive teams. You look at the passing yards, though, for Washington. They have a big advantage in the passing yards. This is a team that's averaging about 343.8 yards per passing. You look at Michael Penix, obviously one of the top quarterbacks in the Pac-12 this year, maybe besides Bo Nix at Oregon, but you look at his numbers on the year, about 4,218 yards of passing on the season, 33 touchdown passes, and then about 9 interceptions. So he's been also taking care of the football pretty well as of late. So Michael Penix has had a pretty good season. He's had a really dominating season as a Pac-12 quarterback, and also he was one of those Heisman finalists, you know, in the Heisman 4 and everything. He didn't win the Heisman Trophy, but he was really close to doing that. So Michael Penix, again, has had a really good season for this Washington team. And then you look at the rushing yards for Washington. This is a pretty average running game. They're averaging about 125.2 yards per rushing on the ground this year. You look at Dylan Johnson, their top running back in the backfield, has 1,113 yards on the year and about 14 rushing touchdowns. So he's one of their top running backs on this Washington team. But again, they're pretty average at running the football, but this is more like a passing attack team. So Washington likes to pass the football a little bit more than they like to run the football. And then offensively and defensively here in the rankings for the Huskies, they're 10th on offense in the country, so this is the 10th best offense in the country. So again, we have two great offensive teams here going at it in this playoff semifinal. Both of these teams ranked in the top 10 on the offensive side of the football. And then defensively, this is where Washington's pretty big weakness comes from. They're 93rd on defense, so the defense hasn't been very solid as of late for Washington. Washington. But this is a team that's really good on the defensive side of the football at times, and then there's some times where they're not really consistent on that side of the football. But other than that, they're 93rd on the defensive side of the football. So these are the stats here for both of these teams, stat comparisons here between these two teams in 2023. Stat comparison-wise, Texas has the advantage in the total yards per game. They also have the advantage in the rushing game. They also have the advantage in the offense and defensive rankings. Yes, they are way better. They are the way better defense going into this game, but they're just barely the better offense going into this game by one rank. And then you look at Washington, they have the advantage in the passing yards, and also they don't have the advantage in anything else, but they are averaging more points per game than Texas. So these are the stat comparisons here for 2023 for both Texas and Washington. Let's now get to the game summary here for this playoff game. So again, it's Texas versus Washington here in the college football playoff. It is on January the 1st, of course. Both playoff games, both playoff semifinal matchups are both on the same day, on New Year's Day, on January the 1st of 2024. This game will be, of course, on ESPN. The game's in New Orleans, Louisiana. This is where the All-State Sugar Bowl is held out every single year. And you look at the spread. The spread's going to Texas here by 4.5 points, and the over and under is no surprise at all at 63.5. So they're kind of predicting this game that it will be a high-scoring game, which I could very well see it playing out that way going into this playoff semifinal matchup. I mean, you got two great offensive teams going at it here. I think both defenses might struggle in this game. But, again, Texas, when you look at the stats between these two teams, they have the better defense going into this game. But, again, these are two really good offensive teams going into this playoff semifinal matchup. And the storylines going into this game, the only storylines going into this game is that Texas is 12-1, and then Washington is undefeated. But also these two teams are coming off their conference championship wins. Texas beat Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship about a month ago. And then for Washington, they defeated Oregon in the Pac-12 championship also about a month ago. So again, both of these teams have good momentum going into this playoff game. And again, two great offensive teams here going at it. It should be a really exciting matchup between these two teams. Both of these offenses are pretty even in my opinion. But again, like I said, Texas has the better defense going into this game. You look at the matchup predictor by the FBI. The FBI favors Texas in this game. The FBI gives Texas about a 69% chance to beat Washington in this game. And then for the FBI for Washington, they're giving about a 31% chance for Washington to defeat Texas here in the playoff semifinal. So again, the FBI does like Texas a lot in this game. I am kind of surprised that, the spread, is 4.5 points in this one. I'm kind of surprised that it's not at like 2.5 or maybe 2 points, like the Michigan and Alabama game from yesterday. Michigan and Alabama, the FBI gives Michigan about a 55.5% chance to beat Alabama in the playoff semifinal. And then for Alabama, the FBI gives Alabama about a 44% chance. So it's pretty even between Alabama and Michigan from yesterday, but it's kind of not pretty even between these two teams because Texas and Washington, again, Texas I think has a better defense, and I think Washington, their defense might struggle in this game against a really good high-powered offense in Texas. So again, I think we're going to expect a shootout here between these two teams. Again, this game will be at 8:45 Eastern Time. This is the second playoff game right after the Rose Bowl game, and then it will move on to the Sugar Bowl here between Texas and Washington. So again, Texas is favored by 4.5 going into this game next Monday, and again, the over and under is at 63.5. That is the game summary here for this playoff semifinal matchup, again between Texas and Washington. Moving on to the previous game results here for both of these teams. Again, Texas comes in with a record of 12-1. You look at their previous game results here. They defeated Kansas State back on November 4th, 33-30 in overtime. That was a very close game there and a very close call for this Texas team. And then they defeated TCU on the road 29-26 on November 11th on the road. They defeated Iowa State back on November 18th on the road as well, 26-16. So they defeated both TCU and Iowa State here in back-to-back road games on November 11th and November 18th. And then in the regular season, the final game of the regular season and rival weekend, they defeated their rival Texas Tech on November 24th, 57-7. So they took care of business in that game against their rival Texas Texas Tech. And then back on December the 2nd, they defeated Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship, 49-21. So they have actually taken care of business in the last two games. You look at those first three games in the month of November for Texas. They weren't very consistent in all three of those games, but the last two games they've been very consistent in all two of those games. So these are the previous game results here for Texas. And then looking at Washington, again, they're coming in with a record of 13-0. They have not lost a game yet this season. They defeated USC on the road in a shootout there, 52-42 back on November the 4th. Defeated Utah in a pretty close game there, 35-28 on November 11th. They survived a pretty close game on the road at Oregon State, though, 22-20 on November 18th. It was actually raining in that game, so both offenses kind of struggled in that game. And then Washington State, they defeated their rival Washington State in rival weekend on November 25th, 24-21. Got a game-winning field goal to close things out, an undefeated season in the regular season. And then back on December the 1st, they defeated Oregon in the Pac-12 championship, and that was enough for Washington to make it to the college football playoff semifinal. So these are the previous game results here for both of these teams. Previous game result-wise, between these two teams, again, Texas was very inconsistent in the first 3 weeks of November. Now the last 2 weeks, they've been really, the last two games, I should say, they've been very consistent. They took care of business against Texas Tech, and then they took care of business in the Big 12 championship against Oklahoma State. And over Washington, they've had a lot of close games this year, but they were able to come away with wins and close calls. Washington really proved us wrong in that Oregon game in the Pac-12 championship. And again, this Washington team just continues to prove people wrong once they get into these big-time games. So they might be able to prove people wrong in this game. Again, they're the underdogs going into this game as well. So again, Washington here. In Texas, this is their previous game results here from their 2023 seasons. Let's now get to my official prediction for this playoff semifinal matchup. Again, it's Texas versus Washington here in the number 3 versus number 2 seeded matchup in the playoff semifinal. And again, the winner of this game will head on to the national championship. This should be a pretty exciting matchup. I think kind of compared to the first game between Alabama and Michigan, I think this is going to be a more exciting matchup, and I think this will be a lot of scoring in this game. You look at both of these offenses, again, ranked in the top 10 on the offensive side of football. And then defensively, Texas, again, has the better defense going into this game. Washington, their defense has been very inconsistent as of late. But Washington's defense could probably make a jump here going into this game against Texas. Maybe they start to shine up in this game against Texas, and maybe they, start to play really well. But I tell you what, Texas, again, their defense has just been really impressive to me, these last couple of weeks. They played really well in that Big 12 championship game. They also played really well against Texas Tech in that final game. How I think the game's going to go down here between these two teams, I think it's going to be a high-scoring game between these two teams. It's a back-and-forth game. But I think, it comes down to a turnover. I think it comes down to maybe like a fumble perhaps. And I also think it comes down maybe to a last-second touchdown, maybe a last-second field goal perhaps as well. But I tell you what, Texas, though, I like their defense in this game. I think Texas's defense forces a turnover at the end of the game, and I think that's what wins Texas the game, and I think that what makes them move on to the national championship. So I'm going to pick Texas here over Washington in a pretty high-scoring game by a final score of 42-38. So that is my official prediction here for the playoff semifinal matchup here in the Sugar Bowl between Texas and Washington. And yesterday I did pick Alabama to win, so we might get to see a rematch between Texas and the Alabama Crimson Tide in the national championship perhaps. But again, this is my official prediction. We'll find out next Monday which teams will win and move on to the national championship and everything. But again, I got Texas in this game in a pretty high scoring game and a close one here. And like I said, I think a turnover probably changes the game, and I also think maybe a last second touchdown could probably change the game as well. But like I said, how I think the game's going to go down, I think Texas's defense forces the turnover at the last minute, and I think Texas defeats Washington here by a final score of 42-38. So again, a high-scoring game here in the Sugar Bowl, and also playoff semifinal matchup here between the Longhorns and the Huskies. This is my official game preview / game prediction here for the playoff semifinal matchup between Texas and Washington. Let me guys know what you think about this game preview / game prediction, and also give me your prediction down in the comments below. Who do you think wins it? Do you think Texas wins it? Do you think Washington wins it? And which team do you think moves on to the national championship game. Give me your predictions down in the comments below, and also give me your final score prediction down in the comments below as well for this game. And thanks for watching this video. Thanks for watching this game preview / game prediction video as well. And stay tuned here for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports channel.